In this lecture, I am going to talk about communication channel. Basically, it is a continuation of the previous lecture. So, in the previous class where we looked at the block diagram of a communication system, we identified 5 major blocks. The first one is information source. The second one is transmitter. And the third one is communication channel. And the fourth one is a receiver, and the fifth one is destination. These are the 5 major blocks that we looked at. So we also looked at the functions of all these things. Okay, so in this lecture I would like to speak a little more on the communication channel. If you remember, I did mention something about communication channel. It can be thought of as a medium. Okay, so communication channels can also be thought of an abstraction to model all the effects that takes place in a communication system, or most of the effects that take place in a communication system. So the channel is a very important thing in communication system. So I like to talk about both these, like medium and abstraction aspects, a little more in detail in this lecture. Channel is an abstract model. It not only includes the physical channel, but also it includes something else. That is why this is called abstraction, abstract model. Or simply you can give the definition of medium, like a pair of copper wires or coaxial cable or waveguides or whatever it is. So when I draw a channel like this, a box, okay, a communication channel, we are also representing the various effects that happen to the signal. Okay, so we are also representing the various effects that take place on a signal. So whether it is distortions, whether it is noise additions that happen anywhere along the communication system. Okay, the effect may not even happen in the channel. The effects will not actually happen in the channel itself or physical medium itself, but we will add all the effects into the channel. Okay, it may happen in the transmitter. The effects may occur at the receiver, but we blame the channel for everything. Okay, so when I say the noise is adding, the noise which is added not only in the channel but also the noise generated from the transmitter. Okay, that also we will put it here only for understanding purpose. It's not actually the noises generated in the channel, but it is it is coming from the transmitter, but that noise is we are adding in the channel. So that is why this is called abstraction. You have the transmitter. We know that in the transmitter we have many electronic components and circuits, and this guy produces some noise, and that noise is modeled in the channel itself. Similarly, here you have receiver. The receiver also, there are certain electronic components and circuits, and that also produces some noise current, and that noise current also included in the channel. Therefore the channel is meant for everything. It not only tells you the physical medium, it also encompasses the noises which are occurring not only in the channel but everywhere else. Okay, so when you are talking about noise addition, okay, that is addition of noise. Actually noise is very important issue in communications. Okay, so because there are a lot of sources of noises in a communication system. The sources of noise exist both in components of the transmitter, as I said, as well as in components of the receiver. Of course, some noise also gets added along the way in the physical medium. Suppose if you use a pair of copper wire, so some amount of noise added in the wire also, in the medium itself. Therefore, you put a block like this, and write channel, and if you write noise, and this noise comprises like from the transmitter, from the receiver, and from the channel itself. Then you can ask a question, why are we doing this kind of nonsense? You can simply put the noise in that from the in the transmitter block itself. No, like see, you have a transmitter and here you have a receiver. Instead of adding the noise here, I can put the noise from the transmitter here itself, and the receiver I can put here also, right? You can ask, but unfortunately in the nomenclature and the past things, it went in that way. Okay, in the literature it went in that way. So you put a block diagram and you put noise. So the noise is coming from the transmitter. This noise indicates from the transmitter, from the receiver, and from the channel itself. So for everything we blame the channel. But not all the noise is added in the transmission. Okay, so lot of it happens at transmitter and receivers, particularly at the receiver. At the transmitter, the noise is not an important issue, because at the transmitter the signal power will be much higher than the noise power, so we can avoid that. The noise, but not, that is not the case at the receiver, because the noise level at the receiver is particularly very important and significant, because at the receiver the signal level is very less, signal is weak. You have a transmitter and transmit say 100 kilometers and put the receiver, and here you may, let's say you are pumping 100 watts, and here you may get 1 milliwatts. So the signal strength is very less. So in that case the noise is very important at the receiver, not at the transmitter. So please remember that. So everything that we can't put either at the transmitter or at the receiver directly can be put in terms of can be directly put in the channel itself. So this is called an abstraction. Okay. Now noise in communication system. Now let us look at what are the noises. Noise in communication system. See, the noise sources can be broadly classified into two types. The first one is internal noise, and the second one is external noise. Again, the external noise is classified into two types: man-made external noise and natural external noise. Let us discuss one by one what they are. Okay. To start with, let me discuss the channel characteristics in terms of noise. Okay. So when I say noise in channels, again this implies that noise in communication systems. Okay. So let me put a block like this, and noise is additive nature. So generally people call AWGN, this is a commonly used noise, additive white Gaussian noise. So when I say noise, the noise is coming not only in the channel, but also it is coming from everywhere in the communication system, transmitter, receiver, everything. Okay, so there are two kinds of noise sources that we have in communication systems. One is internal noise sources, and another one is external noise sources. Internal noise source means internal to the communication system. Somewhere in a communication system there is a noise source, therefore it is internal to the system. It is not coming from outside, that's what we mean. Okay, it is coming from inside of the system. Okay, it is not coming from outside of the system. It may be from the transmitter, or it may be from the receiver, or a physical path. So this noise indicates the noise is coming from the transmitter, coming from the receiver, or from the physical path. The coaxial cable or pair of copper wires or optical fiber or waveguides or air or vacuum or whatever it is, these are all are called physical path. Pair of wires, coaxial cable, then air, vacuum. So the other are what we call external noise, it's here. And again, what we can also say about external noise is man-made noise source and natural noise source. Man-made noise arises out of some activities of mankind. Something is happening in the neighborhood which creates some interference for a communication signal. So that becomes an external noise source or a man-made source. Okay, so now let me first take this external noise source. Not all external sources need not be man-made. So there are certain external sources that are not from man. Okay, it is not made by man, it is coming from natural. Okay, so we have natural external noise sources also. Okay, so the external noise sources can also be natural. So actually speaking, I should have said that the external noise sources are also of two types, right? One is that is the man-made noise source and the natural noise source. Now let us talk about natural noise sources. Okay, so the biggest natural external noise source is lightning discharge. Okay, so when lightning discharge takes place, a large amount of electromagnetic radiation takes place, and this is very important noise source and the potential to interfere over a large frequency range. Now what is lightning? It is a very narrow bursts of large energy. Okay, so that energy exists very narrow duration and large burst. Okay, so it is an impulse kind of signal. So if you look at it from the signal point of view, it is an impulse kind of waveform. See, it looks like an impulse because the duration is very small and the height also very large. That's what we mean by impulse function. Okay, impulse means very large magnitude at t equal to 0, and the duration is very small, literally speaking 0 time instant, zero duration. So it's a very large amplitude waveform. Obviously it has electromagnetic in nature. Therefore what kind of spectrum does an ideal impulse have? Suppose recall from your Fourier transform. You take an del of t impulse function, and this impulse function, if you take Fourier transform, then you will get a constant. Okay, you will get 1. That means what? For all frequencies the value is 1. What we mean by that? Let us say x of t equal to del of t. So from Fourier transform of an impulse, it is a constant function. Say its value is 1 volt or something else. Okay, so its spectrum is very wide, right? From minus infinity to plus infinity, it has contribution. Therefore it has a potential to interfere over a very large frequency range. Okay, so lightning discharges are very important from this point of view. So whenever lightning happens, then there is a possibility to interfere over very wide range of frequencies. It equally affects. So lightning discharge has a potential to interfere over a large frequency range. Actually, the spectral characteristics of these discharges, that is the noise source, is not exactly a constant. Okay, so we are saying that it is an impulse, but actually it is a pulse. It is not an impulse. For theoretically, people will say it is an impulse, but no pulse can exist for 0 duration, right? At least it exists for a millisecond or microsecond or nanosecond. So it exists for a finite amount of duration, like this. Okay, so what we are saying is that it is an impulse, but actually it is a pulse of some finite duration. So this duration is finite. So the duration may be very small, but it is still finite, right? I cannot say even if it is 1 millisecond, I cannot 0 seconds duration. Still it is finite. Now it is no more an impulse, it is a square pulse or rectangular pulse like this, but the duration is very, very less. Let's say 1 nanosecond or 1 millisecond or whatever it is. So it is a pulse. You take a pulse and take Fourier transform of this. What will happen? Let's say the pulse exists between, I just enlarge the scale. Let's say this is minus tau and this is plus tau. If you take Fourier transform of this, then it is a sinc function. Slowly degrades. Okay, and this point is minus pi by tau and this is pi by tau and so on. This is 2 pi by tau, 3 by tau, pi by tau, and this point is 2 tau, and this is spectrum x of j omega. Okay, and this signal is x of t. Okay, it's a sinc function like sin x by x. For example, if this lightning discharged is of duration of tau seconds, what will be the nature of the spectrum? It is a sinc function, tau seconds, and sin pi of tau divided by pi of tau. Okay, so now sin pi of tau is always between plus 1 minus 1. Maximum value it can take is plus 1 and minimum value it can take minus 1, right? So now as a function of frequency, you look at this guy, sin of pi of tau divided by pi of tau, numerator and denominator. The numerator maximum value is plus 1 and the minimum value is minus 1, irrespective of the frequency. Whether you take f equal to very low value or very high value, the numerator is always between plus 1 and minus 1. What about the denominator? The denominator, I have a function of frequency. Okay, if f is very high, this value also high. Denominator is high. Denominator is high means the whole value will come down. Sorry, if f is low means the whole thing will increase, shoots up, because it is inversely proportional. So therefore your sinc function is inversely proportional to frequency 1 over f, and this is called a lightning discharge noise. So the noise contribution is very, very high at low frequencies and very low at large frequencies, very high frequencies. Okay, and this is also called atmospheric noise. Due to lightning discharges. Okay, for example, let's say if f equal to 10 hertz, then sin of pi of tau divided by 10, that is 0.1 times sin pi of tau. That is a contribution of your lightning discharge. When f equal to 1 gigahertz, then the noise contribution is at 10 gigahertz sin pi of tau divided by 1 gigahertz means 10 power minus 9. So this is 10 power 9. So 10 power minus 9 times sin of pi of tau. So negligibly small. at very high frequencies. Therefore, for all practical purposes, we can conclude that, or we can comfortably say that the contribution of noise at very high frequency is very, very low. But at low frequencies, it affects your signal significantly. So this atmospheric noise due to lightning discharges actually has a spectrum which decays with the frequency. Okay, if you increase the frequency, the spectrum decays. So it is really more important at low frequencies than at higher frequencies. So one should consider this at low frequencies. Whenever you are communicating at low frequency, you should be very careful about this atmospheric noise. For very high frequency, it's not an issue. Now lower and higher is the relation to the various bounds that I was talking about in the last lecture. Let us say in medium frequency band or high frequency band or very high frequency band, this may be significant. We know the frequency range, what is the frequency range of high frequencies, VH very high frequencies and medium frequencies and all. But as you go higher and higher in the frequency, the effect of this noise will be smaller and smaller because the spectrum decays with respect to the frequency as you move on to the higher end. So I have to be particularly very important, very careful or cautious about at low frequencies. For example, if you are doing communication at a very low frequency for very strategic applications, this noise becomes one of the major sources of disturbances for us to worry about. So we should consider this. So that's about the frequency spectral characteristics of atmospheric noise. And then let me talk about in time domain. Okay, so what are this kind of noises, how characterized in the time domain. Okay, in time domain, this kind of noise is characterized by large amplitude, because when lightning discharge comes, very large amplitude and narrow pulse. It exists only short duration. So these are the two ways we can describe: very large amplitude and a narrow duration, very small duration. Therefore, it is also sometimes called impulsive noise, atmospheric noise or impulsive noise, because it exists over 1 milliseconds or so. So it is called impulsive noise. Impulsive nature this is. So this is particularly important at low frequencies. Let's say in the AM broadcast radio, I think let me give the AM radio frequency range. It is roughly 550 kilohertz to 1600 kilohertz. Some people will say 535 kilohertz to 1645 or 65 something. Okay, some roughly 1.6 megahertz you can say. There is no clear exact range for this. Okay, so in particularly important for this frequency band, because this is not a very high frequency band. So this frequency range is very severely affected by your impulsive noise. So it is actually called medium frequency band, MF. Okay, medium frequency. So medium wave in the standard terminology. If you take FM broadcast radio, the operating frequency is 88 megahertz to 108 megahertz. Now here this is much higher than the 1 megahertz, right? Here it is roughly 1.6 and this is 88, close to 100 megahertz. So it is 100 times bigger than your AM carrier frequency. So atmospheric noise becomes relatively not so important in FM. So it doesn't have the potential to disturb as much as it has this particular frequency band, but it affects very severely in AM system. Okay, so next let me talk about man-made noise sources. Like you can think about a high voltage power line corona discharge. high voltage power line, corona. This is not coronavirus, this is corona discharge. Okay, so a corona discharge is an electrical discharge, okay, brought on by the ionization of a fluid such as air surrounding a conductor. Let's say this is a conductor carrying, let's say, 330 kilovolts or 220 kilovolts, like that, and air molecules are there. These air molecules are ionized surrounding a conductor, and because of that ionization the electrical discharge can happen. Okay, so therefore a corona discharge is an electrical discharge, okay, brought on by the ionization of a fluid such as air surrounding a conductor, and that is electrically charged. So that is called corona discharge, and this discharge will come and interfere with the our signal of interest or our band of interest. So this is the first point, and the second man-made noise is commutator. Okay, so commutator generated noise. In electrical motors and generators, particularly motors, you take your mixie, grinder, then electrical motors, small motors, big motors, rice mill, whatever it is, pump set. Okay, so if you consider the electrical equipment which is operating in our neighborhood, which contains, let's say, electrical motors or electrical generators, we know that these motors and generators have a kind of switching, okay, going on all the time. Okay, in commutator there is an on-off contact. Okay, in one half cycle it contacts, in another half cycle it does not contact, on and off contact. Okay, that thing happening all the time, and there is a armature which rotates. In one point it touches and another point it doesn't. Okay, so the contact between the armature and the outside world is through these brushes. Okay, there is a semicircled brushes will be there, and through that brushes there is a electrical contact between the rotating object and the stationary object in the electrical motors or generators, and the brushes operates through the commutator. Okay, brushes and the armatures constantly going through a process of on and off, and therefore creates switching, and that again creates a kind of an impulsive noise. So we call this commutator generated noise in electrical motors. Similarly, ignition noise in automobiles and aircraft. Ignition noise in automobiles and noise. Okay, you can think of aircraft or the automobile system where ignition takes place. Ignition means what we are doing. What do we mean by ignition? You are creating a spark. If we have some scooter like a TVS 50 or Honda Activa or anything, you can open the engine and you can find a spark plug. So every the spark comes periodically. Okay, that spark is used to burn the fuel. So you are creating a spark. That means you are creating momentary spark in every cycle. So that spark is coming periodically. Every cycle there is a time during which you are creating a spark. So the generated spark is of course the source of radiation, a source of electromagnetic noise for us. So therefore ignition noise in automobiles and aircraft also affects your system. And then one more type is man-made noises, telephonic exchange office. Again there are no switching takes place, telephonic exchange. A lot of switching takes place. You are connecting users as we dial the numbers. See, person A wants to talk to person B through exchange, and in this exchange, let's say there are 1000 users, and there is a trunk line, again exchange office. Let's say this is in Bangalore and this is Chennai. So trunk, exchange office. Here switching takes place from A to certain person, let's say C. So you have to route the call from A to C. So there is a lot of mechanicals. Of course, age of mechanicals which is now over, but still there are electrical switches. Switching is taking place through electrical switches. So you have to create a path between the person who wants to talk and to the person who wants to or who has to dial. So creation of that path has to do a lot of switchings. So again, let's say at telephone exchanges, there is a lot of switching. So any place where there is a lot of electrical switching takes, it is a source of radiation for us. Please remember that therefore a source of typically what you call impulsive noise. These are all like impulsive noise. So let us look at it a little differently, different way for two kinds of situations. If you are actually carrying out voice communication or analog communication, impulsive noises at best an irritation. Okay, it generally disturbs as much as possible. So if you try to listen to shortwave radio or AM radio, sometimes when lightning takes place, you do hear a lot of disturbing kind of sounds, because at low frequency it affects very severely. So it is an irritation actually, but you can still make out what is happening, what is being said. Perhaps the essence of the song that you are listening to is still intact. Okay, intact, even though there is a lightning discharge. But when you are communicating data through the channel, this can be fatal to the data. Okay, for data, this is very, very dangerous. So the amplitude of the impulse is much larger than the signal amplitude. Okay, in that case, what will happen? The impulse will overtake the receiver, overtake the signal amplitude. It completely disturbs the signal for a short duration. And what you will finally get in the output will have absolutely no resemblance to the data that you actually transfer. See, you have a transmitter, transmit some data to the destination, receiver. In between the impulsive noise, it completely collapses your data, and there is no way to resemble with the transmitter. So the impulsive noise is not that much dangerous for analog communications or speech or music communications, but it is very, very dangerous for data communication. So impulsive noise is something that we must worry about in digital communication, especially data communication. Not that it is not important for analog communication. In fact, analog communication also it is important. Okay, it is something very, very crucial to worry about in digital communication, because data would be entirely lost in that interval in which this large amplitude pulse interference. Let's say you are transmitting data at 1 megahertz and this impulsive thing occurs for a 1 millisecond duration, then you can think of how much data you are going to lost. Okay, because the data rate is the duration of each data is 1 microsecond. In 1 millisecond, 1000 data you might have transmitted. The 1000 data will be lost. 1000 bits you will be lost. You will be lost. Okay, in 1 millisecond duration. Suppose your transmission rate is 1 megahertz. So such a very crucial thing in digital communication. All right. Now let me stay with man-made noises. But in this case, the man-made noise are not due to other activities of mankind, but due to communication activities of mankind itself. Something called radio frequency interference. in short it is RFI. So there is so-called radio interference that we must talk about, which is usually denoted by RFI. Now this is particularly important when you are doing communication from free space, especially using radio waves. So there are lots of people who communicate in today's scenario. You are not the only one who is transmitting all the time. There are many peoples around you, they are transmitting, and in fact they try to share the spectrum. So in one region, in your place you try to use the frequency, certain frequency bandwidth, and the same bandwidth the other person also will try to use in some other geographical location. Okay, let's say if you take Trichy, and this is NIT campus and this is IIIT campus. The distance is between, let's say, around 25 kilometers. And there is one my neighboring place, there is one more region, and use some other frequency band, let's say X band, some frequency band. And if the signal strength is good enough, then this will come and interfere the same frequency which is used by somebody else. Therefore this is called radio frequency interference. Okay, so all use the same frequency at different time slots, that also one possibility. So typically in a small neighborhood all operate at different frequencies, but if you move a little further away, then some other people in different geographical locations, people will use the same frequency band. So in that case, if you pump a large amount of power, then the signal has enough strength to reach that region and it will interfere with the intended signal. Therefore, since there is a large number of users, there is a bound to be interference. If not within the cell, but nearby the cell, just nearby cell or couple of cells away. Say this is one cell and this is one cell and this is one cell, like this. In fact, the cell is circle, but when we model like a hexagon, you operate one frequency, let's say 950 megahertz, and here also you use 950 megahertz. But if the signal strength is large enough, then it will come and interfere here. Here of course you will use 955 megahertz, no problem. So RFI, radio frequency interference, is today very important in view of the fact that there is a very high density transmission environment, particularly in the context of mobile communication. This is a very important issue that we need to look at. So high density transmission environment, one has to take care of this radio frequency interference, because there are so many communication activities are happening in and around you. And there are aircrafts which have been guided to land at the airstrip. So there are a lot of transmission taking place because of that. There is a broadcast activity that also taking place. There is a satellite communication that is taking place around you. The radar systems which are operating in the region, which are operating in the neighborhood to track either your friendly or unfriendly airplanes, your friendly and unfriendly ship, submarines. So many communication activities are taking place all the time in and around you. So every communication activity is a source of interference to every other, theoretically other sources. So if they are close by, there is a potential for interference. So all this we call radio frequency interference, RFI. Now, although I have gone from natural external sources to man-made external sources, if we combine briefly to natural noise sources in nature, these are natural sources which come from outside of our terrestrial world. Okay, so this RFI need not come only from other communication equipment on the globe. You can have RFI, radio frequency interference, from outside the globe. It can come from the sun, it can come from the moon, it can come from the far away stars. Okay, so there is a chance to come, chance to get this radio frequency interference from outside of the universe itself, outside of the earth itself. For example, we know the sun, it is the major source of everything to us. Okay, so all kinds of energy, there is a lot of electromagnetic radiation energy in the form of radio waves from the sun. So most of the time when we talk about sun energy, we talk about the light energy and the ultraviolet and infrared and heat something else. But if you go low down, basically there are radio waves. So one has to keep that in mind, of course. If you do optical free space communication, then directly it is the problem. Okay, so basically the stars, the sun, the moon, each of them is a source of radiation. Okay, the star looks very small, it will be very small, but the collective effects of many stars, because we are not only having only one star, we are having thousands of millions of stars. So the collective effect is significant. So when you are working with very very weak signal, then this effect is very very significant. So all this noise, background noise due to this extraterrestrial sources again becomes significant, because the signal which comes from satellite is very very weak. So in that case, this extraterrestrial noise also comes and affects. Of course, as I said, one man's food is another man's poison, right? Like one thing is good for you and the same thing is not good for others. So what we consider noise is very important signal for somebody else. See, the radio frequency interference which comes from the sun, moon and the stars are very bad for communication engineers, but this is very very important for radio astronomers and other scientists who working on astronomers. So they are looking for this very weak signal and trying to understand the objects, understand the sun, understand the moon and understand the stars. And we here are generating a lot of interference for them to observe. So it is exactly like this. See, for them we are noise, we are generating some amount of noise, and for us those are noises. Okay, so for them what we do here is a source of interference in their work, because they cannot observe these effects properly, and there is a lot of tussle between radio astronomers and the communication engineers in getting the bands allocated. Okay, for example, you might have heard of the giant radio telescope in India, which is located in Pune, and in Tamil Nadu the place Ooty, and they work in a frequency band, and that the frequency band is being endangered by the communication activities that whatever we do, okay, that are taking place. So there is a lot of tussle that is going on in these issues. So the source of interference for us becomes a source of information for them. The interference source is an information source for somebody else. It may looks like an interference for us, but it is the information source for somebody else. Okay, so that's all about external noise sources. So we talked about this radio frequency interference from various places, internal and external. Now let us think about the following situation, where your own communication activity can generate interference for you. Now one can ask a question, can that happen? Can you imagine the situation where the signals that you have transmitted can also be a source of problem for the receiver? Yes, in certain situations. So let us consider the following situation. So you have the transmitter and give it to the antenna like this, transmitting antenna. This is transmitting antenna. And now there is a channel, physical channel. It can be air, it can be vacuum, it can be anything else. And you have you put a receiving antenna and give it to the receiver, and this one is receiving antenna. Okay, so you have a transmitter, you have a receiver. Ideally there should be a single path of propagation. Okay, so between the transmitter and the receiver, that is the problem. But sometimes this may not happen, especially in wireless environment. You may not have single path of propagation, you may have more than one path of propagation, because the signal whatever transmitted by the transmitting antenna will fall on different objects. It falls on a tree, it falls on a car, moving car, it falls on a building, and it gets reflected and comes to the receiver ultimately. So if there is single path between these two, then no problem, absolutely no problem. But let us say for various reasons there exists a multiple path between the transmitter and the receiver, because in between the objects are moving, keep on moving. So the radio energy not only goes from directly from the transmitting antenna to the receiving antenna, it also goes via indirectly. Okay, now the receiver is confused. So you have the transmitting antenna and you have the receiving antenna. So you have one path like this, direct path, one more path. Here you have a car or bus, and the signal falls and reflects. You may have a tree, again the signal falls and reflects. There are multiple paths like this. So the receiver doesn't know which one is the right signal to look at, because the receiving antenna receives many signals, out of which one the receiver should look at. That is a problem now. Now what is known is that depending on the relative delays of these paths, the signal at the receiver may be weak or strong. The direct path signal may be strong than the reflected path, because it travels longer distance. During the reflection some amount of energy will be lost. Okay, suppose you take a sine wave and delay it by different phases, because once it takes longer path then delay will be more. Okay, so you are adding the same frequency sine wave in different phases. See, here also you will get one sine wave, here also you will get one sine wave, here also you will get one sine wave. So you are adding many waves that will be equal to the corresponding number of paths. So depending on the relative phases of these various sine waves of the same frequency, remember the frequency is same but the phases are different. The net amplitude of the resultant sine wave may be either small or large. If it is constructive interference, then the signal strength will be large, and if there is out of phase addition, then there will be destructive interference. Okay, they will reinforce each other. They may create a destructive interference each other. It depends on the relative phases. Also, this multipath environment is not fixed with time, it changes with time, because the object is moving, the bus is moving, the car is moving, or you itself moving. Suppose you are using a mobile phone and you yourself moving somewhere else, you are traveling on the car or traveling the train or whatever it is. Okay, so the signal is weak from time to time. Sometimes you get a destructive interference, so signal is very weak at that time. Sometimes you get a constructive interference, so the signal is very strong. So this is what is called fading effect. So this thing you will be studying in detail in the follow-up course, in something, the course name is called wireless communication. Okay, so continuous variation of the signal strength is called fading. So signal fading takes place now because of this interference, and that is very irritating for us in analog communication and very destructive to data communication. So either you go for analog communication or data communication, this fading is a fatal. It is unacceptable. It's very irritating. So this is typically happen in mobile communication, because between the base station and your handset in your mobile phone there are multiple paths. It is not a single path. Why? Because the base station transmitter is not pointed towards the handset, because you will be standing in one location and afterwards you are moving to some other location. So it is in general a broadcast. So once you generate broadcast, you will get a direct signal from the base station, and you have the handset like this, mobile, you will get the direct path. Sometimes it falls on the vehicle, and sometimes it falls on the trees and comes here, or you yourself moving. Okay, so sometimes you will receive indirect signals, okay, which are reflected by buildings, which are reflected by trees, and all kinds of sources. So in addition, if the user is moving, okay, so there is a more chance to get a multiple path of receiving, multiple path of propagation. Okay, so therefore the signal strength is changing continuously with respect to time. So the actual path do not remain fixed here. The path is not fixed. The path also changing and signal strength also changing. So you are theoretically able to see the effect of fading in mobile phone environment. However, your handset is so nicely designed that it does not allow the fading effect to come through to you. Okay. So that is a very good and important signal processing challenge for communication engineers. So with modern sophisticated DSP algorithms and many more developments, the fading is not observed by the user. It is maximum amount eliminated to make sure that this fading effect does not finally reach the receiver, or all the data or SMS information will not be lost, okay, or the internet information that you are transmitting through the mobile phone. So that is a very good thing. So that is one of the great challenges and very important area of research even today. So far we have discussed the natural and man-made noise sources from outside of communication system. So remember, we said noise sources could be internal to the communication system, okay, or external to the communication system. Now let us return to noise sources internal to the communication system. Internal noise sources. Remember the definition of internal noise sources. The internal noise source which generates within the components of the communication system. Okay, you build a transmitter, receiver, these all are built with the help of or built by using electronic devices. Okay, so now one can ask question, where will they be generated, and where does noise gets generated? Okay, now you know about electrical current, right? The flow of electrons is called current, right? Now one can ask a question, is that flow smooth? I mean, is it very nice smooth flow of electrons that takes place, or is it something different? Because you take a conductor, there is a flow of electrons Now this is the definition of your current. Flow of currents, flow of electrons is called a current. Now will the flow be smooth, or will the flow be random? Basically electrons are always in a random motion, because same polarity will repel each other, so they will move randomly. So when you apply a voltage in the conductor, current starts to flow in the conductor. What happens is this random motion drifts to one side from let's say A to B. You apply a potential here. So there is always this random motion of electrons due to thermal energy that they contain. See, some amount of electrons are moving because of the applied potential, and due to thermal energy, some amount of electrons moving randomly, and these electrons constitutes the noise current. So depending on the temperature at which they are operating, the noise current comes. So this is the first most important source of noise. So this present in every electrical components of a system. Okay, you take a resistor or capacitor or inductor or transistors or diodes or whatever it is. Okay, so this noise current comes. So wherever there is a current flow, even if there is no current flow, there will be thermal noise. Even suppose if you don't switch off the battery, then also there will be thermal current, but the cumulative effect is zero in that. On an average, the thermal current is, thermal noise is zero. So the first kind of thermal noise is what we call, the first kind of internal noise is what we call thermal noise. So thermal noise is an internal noise. So there is a well known formula for this, how to calculate how much noise you will see. We will discuss these formulas a little later after completing amplitude modulation and frequency modulation. And this thermal noise depends on temperature at which you are operating, at which the components is operating. In the circuit you have resistor, diodes, you have all kinds of electrical components, electronic components. Every one of these components generate thermal noise. And since we have hundreds of thousands of these components in a system, the overall effect of this noise will be significant. If it is one or two devices, then okay, you can say it is negligible, but we have many devices. So this is one kind of internal noise. Therefore, the thermal noise occurs due to random motion of free electrons in a semiconductor or conductor, both. Of course, thermal noise is only due to free electrons, not all electrons in a conductor or a semiconductor. So thermal noise occurs because of the free electrons, not the electrons which is bound to an atom. The second kind of noise is called short noise. So in all active devices, we have charged carriers. For example, you have diodes, transistors, these all are called active devices, right? There we have charged carriers. Okay, in a semiconductor you work with electrons and holes. So wherever you have semiconductors or active devices, we will work with electrons and holes, right? So typically they propagate from, let's say, one point to another point, let's say from p type material to the n type material. It goes from one junction to another junction or one point to another point, and again These charge carriers, we are not talking of only electron motion, we are talking of any kind of charge carriers including holes that you might have. The arrival of these charged carriers at a particular point will be totally random. So the short noise occurs due to charged carriers, not free electrons like as I said for thermal noise. So that kind of randomness also generates noise called short noise. So therefore short noise is due to random arrival of charged carriers. Random arrival of charged carriers in various kinds of semiconductor devices. So I am not going to detailed physics at this point. Maybe if time permits, we will discuss this separately a little later. So you will have a short noise in transistors and in diodes and things like that. So there are slightly different kinds of physical effects, and that is why they have been given different names, and their mathematical models are also slightly different from each other. Okay, so that's all about internal noise. Okay, so maybe I'll stop at this point. Okay, so in the next lecture, let me discuss propagation in communication channels. Okay, type of communication channels and how EM waves propagate in the channel, like free space channels, and then guided EM wave propagation channels and optical channels, and how the signal is propagated in conventional channels like copper wires and so on and so forth. Okay, so let me stop at this point. Thank you very much.